And pressure is mounting on Zimbabwe's President Robert Mugabe to step down. The Zanu-PF Central Committee is likely to meet today and decide on Mugabe's future. Report says Mugabe will also meet the army chief. Now, tens of thousands of people gathered yesterday in Zimbabwe's capital of Harare for a day of protest to demand the resignation of President Robert Mugabe. The regional branches of ruling Zanu-PF party, as well as the war veterans who until last year were loyal to the president, are also saying Mugabe should quit. Mugabe, who is 93 years old, had been under house arrest for days, but on Friday he made his first public appearance. And joining us now over the phone from Harare is AN7's Audrey Chimwanda. Welcome, Audrey, to Ground Report. Now, we know that today is the D-Day, where the hierarchy of the ruling Zanu-PF is due to meet earlier today, and is also believed that believed to begin the process of formally removing Mr. Mugabe. Please give us the report on the ground.
A very good morning to you and to our viewers as well. I'm on ground zero right now at the Zanu-PF headquarters, where the fate of President Robert Mugabe hangs in the balance. I can tell you right now, Vio, as I'm speaking to you, I can see a lot of activity right outside of the gates of Zanu-PF headquarters, a lot of vehicles that are coming in. We're expecting the provincial heads of the 10 provinces of Zanu-PF to convene here today and decide the future of President Robert Mugabe. They cited 8 of the provinces that resolved to have Robert Mugabe recalled from the party and from the government, cited incapacitation and old age as the reasons why they want him recalled. The other 2 provinces did not resolve to this. So ultimately, this is a do-or-die meeting for President Robert Mugabe. They are the only people that can recall him from the party. So whatever Central Committee, which is the supreme organ of ZANU-PF, outside of the Congress, it is the supreme organ of the ZANU-PF, they can make that decision today. Simultaneously as well, Rio, there's happening at State House with President Robert Mugabe and army military chiefs at the moment. But just looking at both meetings and in comparison, constitutionally, the one that really matters the most is the one that is happening at ZANU-PF, because we do understand from the negotiations that have been happening with the military. I understand President Robert Mugabe has been citing the Constitution as the reason why he will not be signing any papers to resign, saying it's unconstitutional. I was elected by people and I can only be removed from this position in a constitutional manner, because the people go and vote me out of the party and out of the government.
Now, Audrey, there's reports that the members of the party also attempting to dismiss the 93-year-old leader to replace him with the ex-president, or rather Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa. Please give us a more brief report on that ground.
Absolutely, Vio. ZANU-PF the heads of the provinces have resolved to have the ex-Vice President Mnangagwa to come and replace Mnangagwa. That is the resolution that they came up with. Also very important to note, Vio, is they've also asked for those members that were expelled from ZANU-PF without due process to be reinstated. Case in point, the ex-former Vice President Mnangagwa to be reinstated back into the party. But they've also resolved to have members of ZANU-PF to be expelled that were part of the G40 that is being cited as having destroyed ZANU-PF from inside, citing the National Commissar, that Xavier Kukwera. They've asked for him to be expelled. Jonathan Moy also has been asked to be expelled, to mention a few. I understand those individuals that I've just mentioned are still in custody, haven't been held by the military ever since they took over power in Zimbabwe 4 days ago.
Now, there's also reports that the president has made a desperate attempt to cling on by seeking to suspend parliament. How that is there any information on that?
Well, there has been reports that President Robert Mugabe is looking to do that, but once again, it is not confirmed officially. I think at this moment, people are just looking at what options he has is to hold on to power, which it appears he's trying to do. Because remember, the negotiations at the State House have been going on for the past 2 days now. And if indeed the president really wanted to relinquish his power, by now he would have done so. So with regards to him holding on to power and looking at what options he has, he's well within his right as the president of Zimbabwe to dissolve parliament. That way, the option of having members of parliament, go ahead with a vote of no confidence will not be possible, because there'll be no parliament Parliament and many cabinet ministers, members of Parliament to be able to do that. That's another option that others that are wanting for him to cling on to power could want him to explore.
Now, speaking about Mrs. Mugabe, we also know, well, the allegations of that the meeting of the Zanu-PF Central Committee is also due to fire Grace Mugabe, as she's also widely believed to have instigated the sacking of Mr. Mnangagwa, which the catalyst of the current crisis and the army is taking over right now. Are there any reports on the ground regarding these news of her being fired also?
With regards to the First Lady Grace Mugabe, what we do understand is that she is still under house arrest at the private residence, which is also known as the Blue Roof, that's in Borrowdale.
Yeah.
She's also part of the Zanu-PF Women's League president. There has been calls for her to also not be involved in politics and to also step down. But the biggest challenge that Zanu-PF experiences at the moment is to deal with the presidency and President Robert Mugabe, and that is a really priority right now, because once they deal with that, everything else follows that has been attached to President Robert Mugabe with regards to his wife holding this position, and also the cabinet ministers and those within the Zanu-PF party that have been cited as being part of corruption and being criminal elements around the president.
Now, with regards to the people of Zimbabwe, we know that the rally was called by the Association of Veterans of the War. We know that yesterday's a march went successfully, as it was not violent, it was a peaceful one. How is it happening today on the ground as everyone is waiting for the meeting to start? And what is there to be seen, or rather to be reported on as regards the ground report?
You know, after the historic march yesterday, I'm sure yourself and the rest of the world witnessed thousands and thousands of Zimbabweans that came onto the streets of different races who had just the one message calling for President Robert Mugabe to step down, and also for the regional blocs not to get involved and not to intervene on issues of Zimbabwe. Right now, I'm standing in the streets of Harare. The streets are empty, except for a few people that are going about their business, and most of them actually going to church. The streets are littered. There was no violence. The only violence, well, it's not violence really. There's only one poster of Robert Mugabe that stands outside of Zanu-PF headquarters that was defaced by some of the marchers yesterday. Also, there's a road called Robert Mugabe Way that's in Harare Central Business District. The signpost that reads Robert Mugabe Road was also defaced by protesters yesterday. Those are the two issues that cited anything close to violence that happened yesterday. But the streets are completely empty. The military are still in strategic points of government offices. There's still a military tank that is stationed outside of Parliament. There's still a military tank that is stationed outside of the Supreme Court, and also just a few soldiers that are outside of Zanu-PF headquarters as well, that are manning Zanu-PF members as they're coming in to the offices to convene this meeting that is supposed to have started at 10 o'clock, and I assume it perhaps will be running a bit late, but they should be able to start anytime soon. But as far as the streets are concerned, they're completely empty. Just a few people that are going about their business, and mostly really going to church. Littered streets, as you can imagine. There was a lot of people yesterday on the streets celebrating, drinking and eating. So, yeah, I suppose the municipality will have quite a bit of work in their hands today going forward, trying to clean up the streets.
Audrey, thank you so much. We will get back to you as the day unfolds to give us more information. That's our reporter and NN7 reporter Audrey in Harare, giving us a brief report of what is happening on the ground.